Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Hey, it's Craig, and today I want to share a special holiday episode that I think you might like. It comes from our friends over at History of the 90s, and in it, host Kathy Kenzora revisits classic Christmas movies. If you like what you hear, make sure you search and follow History of the 90s wherever you're listening to right now, and you'll hear from me next week. Until then, happy holidays.
In the summer of 1989, filmmaker John Hughes was packing for a family vacation. It was their first trip to Europe, and he had a little bit of traveler's anxiety. Hughes was worried about forgetting something. Then he thought, imagine if he forgot his 10-year-old son at home? What would he do? In his mind, this quickly became the premise for a movie. And when he returned home, Hughes spent 9 days completing the first draft of a screenplay for what would become the most popular Christmas film of all time. I'm Kathy Kenzora, and this is History of the 90s, a podcast about a decade that changed the world. In this episode, we bring you tales of bungling burglars, desperate dads, and even singing frogs and skeletons as we look back at 5 classic Christmas movies from the 1990s. Before John Hughes wrote the screenplay for Home Alone, he was well established as the king of teen comedies. He had a string of hugely successful films in the 1980s, including The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Hughes broke away from the teen genre to make other classics like National Lampoon's Vacation and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So you would think, with a track record like that, a studio would jump at the opportunity to make a Hughes film. But that's not what happened with Home Alone. Hughes pitched his script to Warner Brothers first, because they'd worked together on several of his previous hits. The studio was initially interested in the new project, but there was a dispute over the film's proposed budget of $14.8 million. Warner refused to pay more than $14 million for what they expected would be a modest family comedy. So Hughes took the project to 20th Century Fox, who saw potential in the story about a little kid left home alone at Christmas. To direct the film, Hughes hired Chris Columbus. Columbus had previously worked for Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, where he wrote the scripts for Gremlins and The Goonies. He would eventually go on to direct the 2 hugely successful Harry Potter films, but back then he was recovering from his 1989 box office bomb, Heartbreak Hotel. Even still, Hughes had faith in Columbus and initially asked him to direct Christmas Vacation. But after a couple of unpleasant meetings with the film's star, Chevy Chase, Columbus said he just couldn't do it. 2 weeks later, Hughes sent Columbus the script for Home Alone, and he was immediately on board. In case you just landed on this planet and have not seen or heard of this holiday classic, it tells the story of the McAllister family, who's preparing to leave for a Christmas reunion in Paris. In the confusion of a rush departure for the airport, the youngest family member, 9-year-old Kevin, is left behind, which no one notices until they're halfway across the Atlantic. Meanwhile, Kevin is ecstatic to find himself home alone. That is, until 2 hopeless burglars threaten to rob the McAllister house and an epic battle ensues. Finding the right child actor to play Kevin was obviously crucial to the film's success. Luckily, John Hughes already had someone in mind.
Where's your wife?
Don't have one.
How come?
It's a long story.
Do you have kids?
No, I don't.
How come?
It's an even longer story.
Are you my dad's brother?
What's your record for consecutive questions asked?
38.
I'm your dad's brother, all right.
You have much more hair on your nose than my dad.
How nice of you to notice.
I'm a kid, that's my job.
Macaulay Culkin was 8 years old when he appeared in the Hughes film Uncle Buck. And the pint-sized actor stole many scenes, like this one, alongside comedic legend John Candy. So Culkin was the first kid Hughes thought of for the role of Kevin McAllister. But Chris Columbus said he wanted to perform his due diligence and audition other child actors for the role. In the end, it didn't matter, though, because after seeing more than 200 young boys from cities across the U.S., Columbus said none were as natural as Culkin. Something else that was critically important to the film's success was making Kevin's battle with the bungling burglars believable. To stop the wet bandits played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, Kevin fills the McAllister house with enough booby traps to halt an army. He coats the steps with ice, swings paint cans from the banister. Christmas ornaments are scattered across the floor like landmines. A blowtorch becomes a flamethrower, and a hot iron is transformed into a ballistic missile. But director Chris Columbus points out that all of the traps rigged up by Kevin can be made with simple household supplies. And they all used kid logic. Even still, to make the movie work, Columbus said the traps needed to look and feel violent. And because there was no CGI used, it was all practical effects. As a result, the director says there were 3 or 4 times when he thought his stuntmen were dead after shooting a scene. But the magic of Home Alone isn't just in those crazy pratfalls and other painful mishaps. It's in the manic charm of 9-year-old Macaulay Culkin, who will always be remembered for this adorable scene.
I can't seem to find my toothbrush, so I'll pick one up when I go out today. Other than that, I'm in good shape.
Chris Columbus says Culkin's iconic hands-on-face scream was not actually how the scene was written. The director thought that Culkin was going to slap cologne on his face and then move his hands away and scream. But on the first take, he slapped his face and kept his hands there as he screamed, like the famous Edvard Munch painting. That lightning in a bottle moment was all Culkin. Macaulay Culkin's co-star from Uncle Buck also made a memorable cameo in the film as Gus Polinski, the enthusiastic polka king of the Midwest who offers a ride to Kevin's mom, played by Catherine O'Hara. Candy liked to improvise and had the whole cast and crew in stitches during his scenes. According to Columbus, Candy went off script and surprised everyone in this scene when he told Kevin's mom he once forgot one of his kids at a funeral parlor.
There he was. Apparently he was there alone all day with a corpse. Now, he was okay, after 6-7 weeks. And I came around, started talking again. But he's okay. They get over it. Kids are resilient like that.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about this.
Well, you brought it up. I was just, trying to cheer you up.
Sorry, I did.
When Home Alone premiered on November 16, 1990, 20th Century Fox was worried it would be swamped by other anticipated big releases, including Rocky V and Godfather Part 3. But the little movie about a kid and 2 bumbling burglars defied everyone's expectations. It held the #1 spot at the box office for 12 consecutive weeks, earning $285 million domestically. And today, it remains the highest-grossing Christmas-themed movie of all time, followed closely by the 1992 sequel, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. After Jim Henson died unexpectedly in 1990, the imaginative, soft-spoken, creative visionary left a massive hole in the industry. His blend of whimsy and emotional depth made his creations truly unique, and no one was sure if the Muppets would be able to carry on without him. Then, 2 years later, in 1992, Henson's son had a meeting with his agent that got the ball rolling for another Muppet movie. Brian Henson was running the Henson Company when Bill Haber, co-founder of Creative Arts Agency, sprung the idea on him for a new Muppet movie based on the Charles Dickens tale, A Christmas Carol. Brian says while he was still thinking about it, Haber sold the idea to ABC as a made-for-TV movie. It wasn't long before Disney also got involved, and they liked the project so much it was turned into a full-length feature film. Longtime Muppets writer Jerry Jewell was brought on board to come up with a screenplay, and together with Brian Henson, they initially envisioned a romping parody of the Dickens classic. They thought the Muppets would be a Monty Python-style ensemble running riot through the story of Scrooge. But as the writing progressed, Henson and Jewell became less keen on that approach. That's because while doing research, Jewell had fallen completely in love with Dickens' original 1843 classic. It tells the story about the transformation of Ebenezer Scrooge from cruel to kind after he is visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And Jewell just couldn't bring himself to make fun of it. Instead, they decided to honor Charles Dickens by putting him in the film as the narrator. But of course, this is a Muppet movie, so it was decided that the great 19th century novelist would be portrayed by the crook-nosed furry blue weirdo, the Great Gonzo. Together with his wisecracking sidekick, Rizzo the Rat, Gonzo guides viewers through the story with humor and a little bit of breaking the fourth wall.
And with that, the spirits of Scrooge's partners vanished into the darkness, leaving him once again alone in his room.
Whoa, that's scary stuff. Hey, should we be worried about the kids in the audience?
No, it's all right. This is culture.
Casting Kermit as the kind-hearted and hard-working clerk, Bob Cratchit, was an easy and obvious choice. What was more challenging was figuring out who would replace Jim Henson as the new puppeteer and voice of Kermit. His son Brian was well aware of the importance of choosing the right person for the job, and in the end, Steve Whitmire, who had originated Rizzo the Rat, inherited the role, and he quickly made Kermit his own. As for Scrooge, Henson eventually decided a human should play the part of the mean old man. At first, he considered Tim Curry, known for his campy roles in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Clue. But ultimately, it was decided to go with the more serious actor, Sir Michael Caine, who won Oscars for his roles in Hannah and Her Sisters as well as The Cider House Rules. When Caine was cast to star alongside the wildly wacky puppets, he promised Brian Henson that he was going to play the movie like he was working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. He said, quote, "I will never wink, I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if he is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me." For the role, Caine also had to sing for the first time in a movie, because A Muppet Christmas Carol was also going to be a musical.
Oh, there goes Mr. Humbug, there goes Mr. Grim. If they gave a prize for being mean, the winner would be him.
For the songs, Brian Henson once again enlisted singer-songwriter Paul Williams, who had previously written the Oscar-nominated song Rainbow Connection, sung by Kermit in the original Muppet movie. Rounding out the cast of characters was Miss Piggy as Emily Cratchit, Bob Cratchit's devoted wife. Fozzie Bear is Fozziewig, and my personal favorite, Robin the Frog, as Tiny Tim, the Cratchit's sickly but adorable son.
And in our prayers and dreams, we ask you, bless us all.
A Muppet Christmas Carol was shot over 3 months in the summer of 1992, mainly on a set built at Shepperton Studios in London, England. Stages were transformed into a vast, snow-covered Victorian London, with accommodations for puppeteers who worked beneath and around everything that appears on screen. Jim Henson's 28-year-old son Brian reluctantly took on the role as director, even though he says he didn't feel up to the job. But Disney had confidence he could step into his father's shoes and breathe new life into the Muppet universe. A Muppet Christmas Carol opened in theaters on December 11, 1992, and was well received by both moviegoers and critics. But it only did modestly well at the box office, earning $27 million on a $12 million budget. Henson was convinced part of the reason for that was the movie's late release. Even still, A Muppet Christmas Carol proved something very important. Jim Henson's beloved creations could carry on without him. And the movie went on to become a perennial holiday favorite, selling countless VHS and DVD copies. And for you Muppets completists out there, in 2022, the streamer Disney Plus released a 30th anniversary edition of the film. It includes the song When Love Is Gone, which was cut from the original theatrical release. In the early 1990s, comedian and actor Tim Allen took a break from his hit TV show Home Improvement to go on vacation with his wife. Before he left, a couple of old friends from his former stand-up days in Chicago gave him a movie script to look over, which he agreed to do as a favor. Allen was quite happy with his life as a 90s sitcom star and had never really considered getting into movies. But all that changed after he finished reading the hilarious screenplay about a workaholic divorced dad who must step in for Santa when he accidentally kills the big guy. Allen liked the script so much, he brought it to then Disney studio boss Jeffrey Katzenberg. Disney owned Touchstone Television, which produced Alan's show Home Improvement, so the actor had an in with Katzenberg. Turns out the studio boss loved the screenplay and immediately agreed to make it, which was surprising for a couple of reasons. First of all, long before Tim Allen was playing with power tools on Home Improvement, he had served 28 months in prison for selling cocaine to an undercover police officer. And at the time, Disney had an unspoken no felonies policy, meaning they didn't typically hire actors with criminal records to star in feature films made by the studio. Plus, the screenplay, written by Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rudnick, did not really seem like a good fit for the family-friendly Disney studio, because the original version was actually filled with much darker material and more mature humor. For example, in the initial draft, Alan's character, Scott Calvin, deliberately blasts Santa off his roof with a shotgun. But Disney had a solution to both issues. It decided to release the film under Hollywood Pictures, a division of the company that typically handled more mature titles. Even still, Disney had Benvenuti and Rudnick rewrite parts of the script to make it less edgy and more family-friendly. So instead of shooting Santa, Scott Calvin accidentally kills Old St. Nick by startling him. Santa then slips off the roof and lands motionless in a pile of snow, which is when Calvin pulls a card out of Santa's pocket that changes his life forever.
If something should happen to me, put on my suit, the reindeer will know what to do. Yeah, right.
The infamous clause written on that little card meant that Scott Calvin was required to take over as Santa. All he had to do was slip on the red suit and let the magic happen. In real life, however, becoming Santa was a much more difficult task. In fact, Alan spent 4 hours a day in hair and makeup prepping for the role, and the prosthetics that covered his entire body weighed more than 75 pounds, which became pretty unbearable during filming in Toronto's summer heat. In fact, in 1994, the city was hit with a heat wave, and the building where they did a lot of shooting wasn't air-conditioned. As a result, Alan, who is known for being difficult at the best of times, was pushed to the limit. He often fought with director John Pasquin and regularly stormed off the set. Starring alongside Alan was 8-year-old Eric Lloyd, who played Scott Calvin's son Charlie, as well as Wendy Crewson, who played Calvin's ex-wife Laura, and Judge Reinhold as her new husband Neil. Before the movie was even finished, Disney was so impressed by early footage that it decided to move the project from Hollywood Pictures. It pumped in an additional $1 million for revised music and special effects, and released the film under Disney's main banner. The Santa Claus opened on November 11, 1994, and it was a smash hit, earning $190 million on a $22 million budget. Reviewers noted that the PG-rated movie was still a bit edgy at times, but that didn't stop it from becoming a classic family holiday movie franchise, with 2 sequels and a miniseries on Disney+. And if you've watched any of the sequels, you may have noticed that Tim Allen is mostly out of his Santa costume. That's because he only agreed to return if he didn't have to spend every day in hours of hair and makeup or be weighed down by 75 pounds of prosthetics. In 1996, Arnold Schwarzenegger was still Hollywood's reigning action hero. But the former Mr. Universe was also focused on honing his skills as a comedic actor. 48-year-old Schwarzenegger had adopted a strategy of alternating between big action movies and fun family comedies. So when the opportunity came up to star in a Christmas movie, he jumped at the chance. Jingle All the Way tells the story of overworked dad Howard Langston, who forgot to get his son a Turbo Man for Christmas, which happens to be the hottest toy of the year. He's forced to battle it out on Christmas Eve with another dad who is equally desperate to get his hands on the action figure. Screenwriter Randy Kornfield says he came up with the idea for Jingle All the Way after frantically searching for the red and green Power Rangers one Christmas for his own son. Initially, Kornfield had a hard time getting anyone interested in his screenplay, but then it landed in the hands of Chris Columbus. The director of Home Alone came on board as a producer and convinced 20th Century Fox to buy it. As for a director, Fox tapped Brian Levant. He had just scored a huge hit with the 1994 live-action Flintstones movie and was in the position to pick and choose what he worked on next. Because he's an avid toy collector, he loved the concept of Jingle All the Way and the fact that he would get to help design the Turbo Man action figure featured in the movie. Before settling on Arnold Schwarzenegger to play desperate dad Howard Langston, a few other actors were considered, including Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, and Daniel Stern. But it was decided Arnold was best suited for the role because at the end of the movie, the dad transforms into the red-suited Turbo Man. And who better to be a real-life action hero than the Terminator? Howard Langston's arch-nemesis during his Christmas Eve toy hunt is stressed-out mailman Myron Larrabee, played by high-energy comedian Sinbad, after Danny DeVito turned down the role. The late comedian and actor Phil Hartman also read for the part of Myron, but instead, he was cast as annoying neighbor Ted Moulton, who has a knack for pushing the buttons of Howard Langston.
Ted, I need to speak to my wife. So could you get her on the phone, please?
I think she's in the shower, Howard. Do you want me to go check?
No! No, that's fine. On your way out, just tell her I will be a few minutes late, but you shouldn't worry.
Oh, she won't worry. I'm here and... Oh, these cookies! I gotta get the recipe from Les.
Put that cookie down! Now!
Jingle All the Way was mainly shot on locations in Minneapolis, including the Mall of America, where riotous mobs of extras fought alongside Howard and Myron to get their hands on a Turbo Man. But for the big parade scene at the end of the movie, the production moved to the Universal lot in California, which posed a problem for the actors and 1,200 or so extras who were dressed in winter clothing. It was the middle of July, and temperatures soared above 100 degrees, causing many people to pass out from the heat. Luckily, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a cooling system built into his Turbo Man costume, so he had no trouble filming the climactic scene where Howard saves his son Jamie, played by Jake Lloyd of Star Wars fame.
Thanks, Turbo Man. I knew you'd save me.
You can always count on me.
Jingle All the Way opened on November 22, 1996, and it did modestly well at the box office, earning about $130 million on a $75 million budget. However, it was widely panned by critics, who called the performances awful and the dialogue even worse. An LA Times reviewer summed it up as 80 minutes of unoriginal mugging, silly pratfalls, and ridiculous clown fights. And to make matters worse, a few years later, screenwriter Randy Kornfield was accused of stealing the idea for the movie's premise. The claim said that while working as a script reader for Fox, Kornfield stole from a screenplay the studio had purchased from a high school teacher named Brian Webster. In 2001, Murray Hill Publishing sued Fox and won. The studio was ordered to pay them $19 million, with a portion of the settlement going to the high school teacher. However, following an appeal, the settlement was lowered to $1.5 million. Despite the controversy and the bad reviews, Jingle All the Way went on to become another 90s holiday classic, beloved for its over-the-top humor and Christmas chaos. Speaking of controversies, our next and final film is controversial for another reason. Since its release in 1993, fans have debated whether it's a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie. But for the sake of argument, I'm calling Tim Burton's hauntingly charming tale about Jack Skellington a Christmas movie. In the early 1980s, Tim Burton was working as an animator at Disney. And he had the overwhelming feeling the askew aesthetic he would become known for didn't quite fit in at the House of Mouse. In fact, Burton says he couldn't even fake the Disney style. And he was dying to quit, but decided to stay when he got the opportunity to make a semi-autobiographical stop-motion short film. The 6-minute-long black-and-white movie titled Vincent was an early sample of Burton's unique auteur voice.
Vincent Malloy is 7 years old. He's always polite and does what he's told. For a boy his age, he's considerate and nice. But he wants to be just like Vincent Price.
As Burton wrapped up work on Vincent, he began sketching some designs for a poem he had written titled The Nightmare Before Christmas. The 3-page poem came from Burton's lifelong love of both Halloween and Christmas. It was part Dr. Seuss and part Dr. Frankenstein. It also leaned heavily on the 1832 classic poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, which begins with this memorable line. "'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." Burton's poem begins like this. "It was late one fall in Halloween land, and the air had quite a chill. Against the moon a skeleton sat, alone upon a hill." It goes on to tell the story of Jack Skellington, a gaunt, elegant skeleton who is the king of Halloween Town. Through his own clumsiness, he stumbles upon Christmas Town and then becomes obsessed with trying to celebrate the Yuletide holiday. Originally, Burton imagined turning his poem into a children's book, but after shopping it around to publishers in New York, he found that no one was interested in his slightly bizarre story. Undeterred, Burton shifted his focus to adapting the poem into a stop-motion film, similar to the classic 1964 made-for-TV movie Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which Burton had loved as a kid. Burton created concept artwork and storyboards that expanded the world of Jack Skellington, which included his love interest Sally, along with his ghost dog Zero. Next, Burton enlisted his friend Rick Heinrich, who also worked at Disney and had helped him make Vincent. Heinrich created a 3D model of Jack, and together the pair pitched a stop-motion animated feature to Disney. But the studio turned it down. So The Nightmare Before Christmas was put on the back burner, while Burton completed other small projects for Disney, including the 1984 black and white live-action short film Frankenweenie. Finally, in 1985, Burton left Disney to direct his first feature film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Several more successful movies followed, including Beetlejuice, Batman, and Edward Scissorhands. Through it all, though, Burton had not forgotten about Jack Skellington. In fact, he couldn't shake the project from his mind. But because the filmmaker was working at Disney when he conceived the idea, the studio actually owned the rights to the concept. It wasn't until 1990, more than 8 years after Burton originally dreamt up the story of the Pumpkin King, that he approached Disney again about making his quirky stop-motion film. This time, Disney jumped at the chance. The only problem was Burton had already signed on to direct Batman Returns, which is why Henry Selick was called in to direct The Nightmare Before Christmas. Selick is a skilled stop-motion animator and Burton's longtime friend, so he was thrilled to work on the project. He previously described the opportunity this way: "It was as though Burton laid the egg and I sat on it and hatched it." For the screenplay, initially Burton hired Michael McDowell, who co-wrote the script for Beetlejuice, so he seemed like a good fit. But ultimately, Burton wasn't happy with McDowell's direction. That's when Burton made a major pivot. He brought in legendary musician Danny Elfman, and together, they turned his story into a musical. Before Elfman became a legendary film composer, he was the lead vocalist and songwriter for the 80s new wave band Oingo Boingo. He says writing the lyrics and songs for The Nightmare Before Christmas was by far one of the easiest jobs he ever had, because he connected with the main character, Jack Skellington, and felt they had a lot in common. Elfman would go on to sing all of Jack's vocals in the movie, while actor Chris Sarandon would provide his speaking voice. Catherine O'Hara was the voice of the ragdoll-like creation Sally, while Ken Page voiced boogeyman villain Oogie Boogie, and Ed Ivory is the film's narrator and voice of Santa Claus. The production of the film was gigantic. It began in July 1991 and involved 230 different sets on 20 individual sound stages. More than 220 puppets were constructed for the film's characters, and each one had hundreds of heads that represented every conceivable emotion. The first scene they recorded was the whimsical musical number, What's This?, which depicts Jack's wonder when he discovers Christmas Town.
What's this? What's this? There's color everywhere. What's this? There's white things in the air. What's this? I can't believe my eyes. I must be dreaming. Wake up, Jack, this isn't fair. What's this?
Completing the film took 3 years, and the result was a revolutionary stop-motion masterpiece. After it was released in October 1993, The Nightmare Before Christmas would go on to earn an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects, which was a first for an animated feature. It also cleaned up at the box office, earning nearly $100 million in North America on just an $18 million budget. And Jack Skellington and the rest of the characters from The Nightmare Before Christmas became a merchandising bonanza for Disney. Today, it remains a cult classic. And in 2023, it was even chosen by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. As for the debate over whether it's a Halloween or a Christmas movie, in October 2024, director Henry Selick addressed the issue once and for all. He told the New York Post, 30 years after I directed the film, beneath its candy corn coating, skeletons and vampires, corpse child and witches, I know Nightmare at its heart is a Christmas movie. Thanks for joining me for this look back at some classic 90s holiday films. If you have a favorite, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to 90s@curiouscast.ca, or you can message me through Instagram. You can find the show at That 90s Podcast. I'll be back in January with a brand new episode. Until then, happy holidays. And as always, thank you for listening and supporting the show. This episode was hosted and written by me, Kathy Kinzora. Our senior producer is Dila Velasquez, and sound design and final production is by Rob Johnston. See you next time for more History of the 90s.